Since it's Friday, I'm going to make sure that I do what I do best and ensure that you go into your weekend more pissed off than how you started. If this story makes you happy for whatever reason, then I bless your heart, as they say down in the South. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Today we're taking a look at Justin Trudeau's new scandal or controversy. $8 million. What does that buy you? That could buy you a boat. That could buy you multiple family homes. That could make sure that you never go into debt and your family never goes into debt. It's a lot of money. You could invest that properly. You could do a lot of things. You could buy groceries for a lifetime. What does Justin Trudeau do with $8 million? Justin Trudeau builds a barn. Yeah, $8 million for a barn. So if you're looking at buying property, make sure it's out in the boonies and it has a barn, because apparently barns are worth more than gold. How the hell does Justin Trudeau spend $8 million? Is it equipped with like a nuclear missile or something? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So we're going to take a look at Pierre Poilievre, who just obliterates Justin Trudeau and the Liberals for spending that amount of money on a freaking barn, dude. Oh my God, I had no idea farmers were that rich. Holy smokes, I might get into farming or something if it's not profitable to own a barn. And in case you think that this is just some nonsense rhetoric from the House of Commons, it's all over mainstream media. I mean, this is MSN.com. Justin Trudeau paid over $8 million to replace barn at Rideau Hall, records show. So yeah, for some reason, barns are the new gold standard, I suppose. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's video.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war, the Toronto Police Chief has reported a 132% increase in hate crimes. We see horrific stories of signs being written in spray paint in the Centennial Park that say, attack the Jews. Or in London, a vandalized message said, quote, kill all Muslims. This is absolutely unacceptable. We can all be revolted by the horrors of Hamas, but we should never blame our fellow citizens who are Muslim in Canada. They did not commit those atrocities. You can debate the decisions of the Israeli government, but you have no right to insult your Jewish neighbor or attack his local synagogue. This must be a country based on freedom, where it doesn't matter if your name is Mohammed or Martin, Chang or Charles, Singh, Smith or Steinberg.
Except Jagmeet.
We are all Canadians. We are all patriots. Let us embrace each other with love. Thank you.
Except Jagmeet.
Questions orales. L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah, let's go, Pierre.
After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the lack of competition. Yesterday, the Competition Bureau reported that now the lack of competition is worse than at any time in 20 years, leading to higher prices for consumers and higher profits for corporate oligarchs. Now the Liberal government is considering allowing Canada's biggest bank, gobble up the 7th biggest bank, to eliminate competition and force up mortgage rates on Canadians who already can't afford to pay their bills. Will the government side with consumers and home buyers instead of corporate oligarchs and big banks and block this merger?
No.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as the Conservative leader recycles common sense cliches from decades ago, like an automaton from the Mike Harris era, our government has taken decisive action to help Canadians with the price of groceries by supporting more competition in the marketplace and by increasing housing supply by waiving GST on new rental construction. These are two significant measures the members opposite can support right now by supporting the government's bill on affordability. But they've stated that they won't support that. Can someone from the opposition benches please explain to all of us how voting against measures that are going to substantially help middle-class families, how is that common sense?
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
I'll tell you, not common sense. Spending $8 million on a barn, Mr.
A freaking barn?
The Capital Commission spent $8 million to replace a barn at Rideau Hall. We've long said that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost after 8 long years. While Canadians cannot afford a home, how is it that this Prime Minister is spending $8 million on a barn? And by the way, was it made of gold?
How does that even make sense?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Quite the words from the Leader of the Opposition. I remind him when he was responsible for housing during the Harper years, $300 million spent for housing, less than 100 homes built. Do the math, Mr. Speaker. $3 million a home. That's the record of so-called fiscal responsibility on the other side. On this side, we are getting homes built. Just this morning, the Prime Minister announced over $100 million for the city of Brampton that's going to lead to, in the coming years, 24,000 homes being built.
Wow.
We're going to continue to work with municipalities, Mr. Speaker, through partnership.
Here, here. Good job.
I would encourage all members, including the members who ask questions, to please listen to the response.
Oh, don't get started, Speaker.
The opportunity to take the floor again to pose their questions.
Mr. Speaker, a recent survey has found nearly 70% of millennials and those younger have put off the purchase of a home because of rising prices and rising interest rates. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, that is their legacy. Inflationary deficits that are driving up the cost of living and making housing out of reach for many young people across the country. It's clear this Prime Minister is not worth the cost, so why doesn't he finally listen to our common sense approach to stop his inflationary spending so that Canadians can afford a home again?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Talks about young people, and I'll give him credit in his time during being a member of Parliament. He has put issues on the table with respect to youth, so he can support this government, or at least he should have, with respect to the tax-free savings account that this government put in place to help young people save for down payment. Up to $40,000 can be put into that account, again, tax-free. Add to that, of course, the fact that we continue to build more. We continue to put in place, rather, policies that will see more homes built. We're doing that in partnership with municipalities. They're against all of that, Mr. Speaker. They've put half measures on the table. That's not good enough.
Shame.
L'honorable député de Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians don't have the funds to put into a savings account because of the cost of living crisis the government has created. He mentions
That's
homes.
kind of the catch-22.
Not enough home building in this country to keep up with demand. After 8 years of this government, housing prices have skyrocketed. They've actually doubled. Mortgage rates are up, and the young students and young professionals have given up completely on their dream of home ownership. So I ask again, when will they finally stop their inflationary spending so that young people can afford a home?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives were in power, they ran 7 consecutive deficits. I find it interesting that they claim to be so concerned about a 0.7% deficit that we have here in Canada, the lowest of all G7 countries, Mr. Speaker. We have a serious plan in order to build more homes in this country. We have a serious piece of legislation before this House that the Conservatives are delaying. This will solve the housing crisis, and the Conservatives are delaying that measure, Mr. Speaker.
Terrible.
L'honorable député. I'm going to ask all colleagues, please, to continue. If you
Oh, yeah, I know. You want to flex
ceding the floor to
your
the
power trip, eh?
Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, Bloomberg just reported on a recent
I'm sick and tired of this
survey that
speaker,
shows
man.
How much Canadians are struggling after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government's inflationary spending. 65% of Canadians now say they're concerned about saving for retirement, and 63% are concerned about how to prepare for an unexpected financial event. Less savings, more concern, more risk. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. When will the Prime Minister end his inflationary spending so Canadians can plan for their future again?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
I find it curious that the member opposite even refers to pensions, Mr. Speaker. Under what the Conservatives are proposing, they would gut Canada Pension Plan, Mr. Speaker. What the Conservatives are proposing would also result in Canadian families receiving less money from the federal government. You see, we have the Canada Child Benefit. In fact, checks are going out today, Mr. Speaker, to families right across the country. That is important support for families that are having a hard time to make ends meet, and the Conservatives would see that program completely cut.
Exactly.
L'honorable député de Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and speak about misinformation and how that response has
throw it back at them
in people's lives. The latest MNP Consumer Debt Index shows 51% of Canadians are $200 or less away from not being able to complete their financial obligations. Quote, facing a combination of rising debt carrying costs, living expenses, and concern over the potential for continued interest rate and price hikes, many Canadians are stretched uncomfortably close to broke. This is Canada after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government. When will the Prime Minister stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can afford to live again?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite claims that there is misinformation. I would welcome her to clarify where exactly. You see, the Conservatives have consistently said that they do not want to support Canadians with the programs that we have in place. We have the Canada Child Benefit Program, Mr. Speaker, that is supporting families, that is helping making ends meet. Perhaps she would like to clarify, is that where they are going to cut? Are they going to cut our programs for seniors, Mr. Speaker? Seniors are relying on our government at this time. Mr. Speaker, what the Conservatives are proposing is simply reckless. At a time like this, we need responsible government.
Too much risk.
After 8 miserable years, our military heroes can no longer afford this Prime Minister. This NDP Liberal government keeps driving troop morale down and their costs up. A recently leaked report stated, increasingly members will release from the Canadian Forces rather than relocate to an area they cannot afford or taking a loss on an existing home. The Canadian Armed Forces are in a crisis and are short 16,000 people, but these Liberals are pushing people away and making things worse. Why is the Prime Minister destroying our military?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, before I start, I just want to recognize that today we remember Adresa Patrice Vincent, who lost his life in 2014.
Of the honourable member, I would like to say that, when you think about the housing situation, just last year in our fiscal update, we put $55 million towards the support in
and it did fuck all.
Member. Also, I would like to acknowledge the support that we're putting on our member when they relocate of the reimbursement, legal and real estate fee. Mr. Speaker, we will always be there for our military.
No, you won't. There's a veteran outside of Parliament right now protesting.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is actually repeating Liberal history known
Phil on the hill.
Darkness. Soldiers and their families back then were forced to use food banks. There were slashes to training programs. They operated on old equipment and were sent to Afghanistan without proper boots or uniforms. And now this month the headlines read, soldiers asking for donations to help with housing and food costs. Canadian Forces personnel leaving the ranks over lack of affordable housing. Canada looking to cut $1 billion from the national defence budget. Our troops are out there fighting for our freedoms. Why is this Prime Minister attacking their economic freedom?
Before I continue, I'd like to encourage members, especially those who are at the far end of the House, to
shut your mouth, House Speaker.
Cause disruption in the House. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And again, I want to say thanks to the member for his questions because it actually allows me just to validate some of the measures and the supports that we have put in place for our military. As I mentioned earlier, the reimbursing, the legal and the real estate fees, the covering of some expense for dual residency for up to 6 months if a CAB member cannot sell their residence. We will continue also supporting our Canadian Armed Forces posted across the country and their family. For example, the post-living differential allowance is intended to help reduce financial burdens for CAF personnel and their family. Mr. Speaker, we will not take any lessons from this side of the House.
Ask any veteran or any military personnel.
Kona.
They're not being helped.
Mr. Speaker.
After 8 years of this government and this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, it's no surprise that their billion-dollar green slush fund is lining the pockets of Liberal insiders and is now under investigation. Annette Verschaeren is a good friend of the Prime Minister and chair of the board that's doling out this taxpayer cash. But it turns out her own company received millions from that same fund. This Prime Minister simply isn't worth the cost. So how many other Liberal insiders got rich with this green slush fund?
Mr. Speaker, I know the Canadians are wising up to the fact that the Conservatives are just not worth the risk. But let me answer the member's question by saying, when the minister became aware of the alleged or the allegations of mismanagement at SDTC, he immediately acted and commissioned a review. The review resulted in an action plan that the executive is now implementing by December. And we expect the highest standards of excellence and governance from all of our federal agencies, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
This is the same scandal that has whistleblowers pleading for legal and career protection after exposing this latest scandal in this billion-dollar boondoggle. We know everyone from the board chair to the CEO are in a conflict of interest. They all protect each other and they all make money, and it's all on the backs of Canadians. This Prime Minister simply isn't worth the cost. So will the Prime Minister guarantee these whistleblowers the same protection afforded to whistleblowers in Canada's public service?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, when the minister became aware of the allegations of mismanagement in this particular case, he immediately acted to commission a third-party independent review of SDTC. That review produced an action plan that now SDTC is implementing by December. That will make a substantive difference to resulting or addressing the mismanagement. The highest standards of governance are the expectations that Canadians should have, and it's exactly what our government is doing.
L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Louis.
Oh. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Louis.
Je m'excuse.
I'm sorry. I apologize to the honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lake. Apparently, you have a third question. I thought you only had two today.
What Canadians expect is that whistleblowers, when they
He's on a power trip again.
Corruption with this Liberal government, that they will be afforded protection. But we've seen before how this government treats the rule of law. This is a Prime Minister who blocked the RCMP from pursuing a criminal investigation into Liberal corruption by hiding documents from them. If anyone else hid documents from the RCMP, they'd end up in handcuffs. But with these Liberals, what we see is the continuation of that cover-up. After 8 years, it's a Prime Minister who isn't worth the cost to our democratic institutions. So what evidence is this Prime Minister so desperate to hide from the RCMP, and why does he think that he's above the law?
Well said.
It's no surprise that what the member falsely claims here is something that we take issue with. Earlier this year, when the minister became aware of the allegations of mismanagement, he acted immediately and decided to conduct a fact-finding exercise through an impartial third-party review. That third party produced a report, and that report has now resulted in an action plan that's being implemented. That's going to make a substantial difference in addressing the issues that have been identified. Let's make one thing clear. We expect the highest standards of governance from all federal agencies, and that's exactly what we're standing up for. Well said.